Rafael Lalami.
Larby and Ronnie didn't consider himself a superstitious man, but when the prayer beads that hung on his rearview mirror broke, he found himself worrying that this could be an omen. His mother had given him the sandalwood beads on his college graduation shortly after her death, advising him to use them often. At first he had carried the beads in his pocket, fingered them after every prayer, but as the years went by, he'd reached for them with decreasing regularity, until one day they ended up as a decoration in his car. Now they lay scattered, amber dots on the black floor mats. He picked up as many as he could find and put them in the cup holder.
Larby walked through the corridor to his daughter, Nora's room. He thought for a moment that she wasn't home because her stereo wasn't playing rock music as it usually did. But he heard voices, and so he knocked. Nora opened the door. She wore jeans and a black t-shirt with glittery letters spelling out the name of a rock band. She looked at her watch.
It's already 6:30?
I got some magazines for you.
Thanks, Papa.
She took the magazines from him, and when she stepped aside to drop them on her desk, he saw her friend, the girl who sat by the chair at the window, her hands folded on her lap. She wore a gray pilled sweater and an ankle-length denim skirt, and her hair was covered in a headscarf. Nora introduced her as Fatim Katabi, one of her classmates at the University of Rabat. Larby stepped into the room and cheerfully extended his hand to Fatim, but she didn't take it. Larby dropped his hand awkwardly to his side.
Well, I'll leave you two alone.
Later, when Larby went to the kitchen to get a drink, he heard Fatim's voice.
The injustice we see every day is proof enough of the corruption of King Hassan, the government, and the political parties. But if we had been better Muslims, perhaps these problems wouldn't have been visited on our nation and relevant elsewhere.
What do you mean?
Only by purifying our thoughts and our actions.
Larby walked a few steps down the hallway to Nora's open door, which she promptly closed when she saw him. He retreated to the living room where he smoked his Marlboros, drank more beer, and barely paid any attention to the rest of the match. Immediately after Fatim's departure, Larby knocked on Nora's door to ask what their conversation had been about. He stood close to her, and she wrinkled her nose when he spoke. His breath smelled of alcohol, he realized, and he stepped back.
Nothing, Papa.
How can you say nothing? She was here for a while.
We were just talking about problems at school, that sort of thing.
She was just... She turned around at him, standing over her desk, stacked a few notebooks. Larby stepped in.
What problems?
She was just telling me how last year some students didn't even sit for final exams, but they passed. I guess they brought in someone in the faculty.
What would she know of such things?
She had first-hand experience. She flunked last year.
Maybe she didn't work hard enough.
The kids who passed didn't either.
She can't blame her failure on others.
Nora pulled her hair up into a ponytail. She took out a pair of lounging pants and a t-shirt from her marble-top dresser and flung them on the bed, and then stood arms akimbo, waiting.
I need to take a shower now.
Salma was still napping when he entered their bedroom. He sat on the bed, facing her. Her eyelids fluttered.
Nora can't see this girl anymore.
What? What are you talking about?
I don't think it's a good idea. I caught them talking politics just now.
So?
Don't give me that look if you're Salma. You know exactly what I mean. I don't want her involved in anything. If someone heard the way they talk about the king at school, there would be trouble.
I think Fatim is good for her, frankly. Nora needs to know what's going on in the world around her.
What do you mean?
The world doesn't revolve around fashion and movies.
She can look around for herself. What does she need this girl for?
Look, Nora's going to be leaving at the end of the school year anyway. I doubt they're going to see each other after that. You're making a mountain out of the sea.
She was the sort of woman who liked to end conversations on a proverb. At dinner, Fatim sat across from Larby. He was mildly satisfied to note evidence of a less than genteel upbringing. She had placed her knife back on the table, even after using it. After a decent amount of time had passed and the expected compliments had been made, Larby cleared his throat.
How old are you, my child?
19.
Nora told me you're repeating this year.
That's true.
I was sorry to hear that. It must have been tough.
Nora slammed her fork on her sideward plate and dropped her chin in her hand. She stared at her father angrily.
Let me ask you something. If someone offered you a chance to study in New York, would you take it?
Not again.
Nora sighed, yet she seemed interested in what her friend would say before she turned and waited for an answer.
No one is offering me anything. But But if someone did, I would want to know why they made the offer. No one gives anything for free. That's the trouble with some of our youth.
What do you plan to do after graduation?
I'm not sure yet. It's all in God's hands.
My daughter here wants to leave school, give up going to NYU, and go teach in the villages.
She will do a lot of good.
Don't you think that a degree from abroad would do better for her?
No, I don't. I think it's a shame that we always value foreign degrees over ours. We're so blinded by our love for the West that we're willing to give them our brightest instead of keeping them here where we need them.
If you think teaching middle school is so good, why don't you join Normal?
I may well do that. Although, to tell you the truth, I'm not very good with children.
The dismissive wave of her hand as she spoke made Larby's heart sink. He was losing control of his daughter to this girl who didn't even seem to care enough to want to go with her. He was outside smoking cigarettes when Salma slid the glass doors open and joined him on the terrace. She sat on the wrought iron chair next to him and they stared at the backyard. Salma spoke at last.
What are you going to do about this?
Now you want something done. I didn't know it was going to get to this. What do you think I should do?
I don't know. Just do something.
He didn't have the heart to tell her that he had already asked C. Tawfiq for help and that his friend had said there were no police records on file. She was a member of the Islamic student organization, but the investigation hadn't turned up anything illegal. Tawfiq said he'd keep an eye on her, but all they could do now was wait. Months went by. Exam season was a busy time at the ministry, so when C. Ralph rang the doorbell at the house, Larby thought it was because of some work matter, and he hoped to settle it fast and have him leave before the subject of Nora came up. Larby knew C. Ralph from his days as an education inspector. Ralph had been a school teacher, but eventually he had finished his PhD, and now he was a lecturer at Norris College. Today, Ralph had the exhausted look he always had at this time of year when he had to grade hundreds of undergrad papers.
It's Nora, Mr. Larby. She passed a note to someone.
Larby felt his stomach tighten.
I don't understand.
One of the students, Fatin Katabi is her name. She passed a paper to Nora with questions, and Nora sent it back with answers.
She cheated?
She helped someone cheat. This is grounds for expulsions. But we're friends, and I thought I'd warn you. If it happens again with another proctor, there could be a problem.
Larby turned around, marched to Nora's room, and flung the door open without knocking. Nora's at her desk. He grabbed her by the arm, and she stood.
Cheated the exams? This is how you repay us after all the sacrifices made for you?
What?
How will I ever be able to show my face at the ministry? My own daughter's got cheated the exams.
I was just trying to help Fatin. She didn't know the answer.
Help her? You think this is a word game? You didn't help. You cheated.
I couldn't say no. She begged me.
You lecture us about right and wrong, and then you cheat at your exams. Have you ever opened the holy book, or do you get everything secondhand from Fatin?
If I hear one more word about that damn girl, by God, I'll lock you up in your room. I won't hear one word said about her reputation. Do you hear me?
Everybody cheats. Everybody.
Nora looked him straight in the eye, and he couldn't hold her stare. He'd always kept the favors he did for his friends quiet, but now he suspected that she knew somehow.
That doesn't make it right.
He had to deal with Fatin once and for all. He picked up the phone. The exams were still being scored. There was still time to act. He needed someone trustworthy to deal with Fatin, and he knew Ralph would not let him down. Larby sat at his wife's vanity while Salma folded the laundry. He suddenly felt nostalgic and wanted to ask her about those heady days in the 70s when they were both young and the world was open before them and they had big dreams of setting it right. He had started out as an educator and she as a lawyer, but while she still spent her days trying to help clients, he had moved on to administrative positions and had been unable to resist the temptations that came with them. What had happened to him, he wanted to ask. He felt he had failed, though he didn't know when that had happened. He heard a knock on the door. It was Nora.
I passed my exams. Baba, can I ask you a favor? There's been a problem. Fatin flunked her exams.
And?
Well, she already flunked them last year, so this means she's expelled now. She doesn't know what she's going to do.
Where are you going with this?
What's going to become of her? There's so many unemployed college students, college graduates, but without a diploma, her chances of ever finding a job? It's so unfair.
I don't understand what this had to do with me.
I thought perhaps you could sort it out. You have connections, and she asked me to see if
eyes shifted away from him for a moment and then settled on again. Larby smiled bitterly. Here she was, the purist, the hardliner, the anti-corruption activist, but in the end, she wanted her friend to get special treatment, just like everyone else. He paused to savor the moment, however fleeting he knew it would be.
I don't think it'd be possible. It'll require breaking the law, utterly unexampled, as you well know.
When you play with fire, you get burned.
Nora stared at her angrily and then left the room. Larby turned around on the stool and looked at his reflection in the mirror for a while. He too had played with fire, but maybe he'd already been burned. When he reached across the vanity, Larby noticed a velvet pouch tossed in the middle of Solom's perfume bottles. He took it in his hand and opened it. Within were the prayer beads that had broken, years ago it seemed, and which Solomon had saved here for him. He couldn't help but think about his mother, for whom virtue and religion went hand in hand, about a time when he too believed that such a pairing was natural.
I know I shouldn't be happy about someone's misery, but I'm glad Fatima was expelled. Maybe Nora won't see as much of her.
Do you think that'll help?
I don't know.
Things went badly after that. Fatima was expelled from the university, and without a degree, it was almost impossible for her to find a job. And word spread about her views of the king, closing even more doors for her. There seemed to be little choice left after that. Fatima had to leave. She bought her way onto a boat, taking illegal immigrants to Spain. But everything fell apart. She thought about her first job, her first week in Spain. The captain of the boat had brought her here, hadn't bothered to land at the Tarifa. He'd started heading back as soon as they were within swimming distance of the coast. She'd managed to get to the beach, where the Spanish Guardia Civil was waiting for them. Later in the holding cell, she saw one of the guards staring at her. She didn't need to speak Spanish to understand that he wanted to make her a deal. She remembered what her imam said back in the underground mosque in Rabat, that extreme times sometimes called for extreme measures. She thought about her best friend Nora back in Rabat and wondered what had happened to her, whether she'd kept the hijab or whether, like her, she'd taken it off. Nora was probably still wearing it. She was rich, and she had the luxury of having faith. But then Fatima thought Nora also had the luxury of having no faith. She probably found the hijab too constraining and ended up taking it off to show off her designer clothes. That was the thing with money. It gave you choices. She tried to chase Nora out of her mind. That friendship had cost her too much. She knew that Nora's father, who had taken a dim view of their friendship, had pulled some strings to have her kicked out of the university. If it hadn't been for him,
Maybe.
she would have graduated.
Maybe.
She wouldn't have been so careless in that moment of anger.
Maybe.
She wouldn't have said what she did about the king.
Maybe.
She would have finished school and found a job.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Maybe.